For me, it was always a real study in contrast was Jim Watson and Francis Crick. And a lot of it came down to work. Jim rested on his laurels in many senses. And the psychology of Jim is that Jim has always had an eye for what was attention grabbing. And that was the source of his greatest success. He knew that the double helix was going to be this big epoch-making thing and that he was going to be able to dine out on it because it was a great symbol and all that sort of stuff. So Francis Crick went back to work. He discovered the double helix, and then he did all of the work on translation and all of that sort of stuff. And he was working until the day he died. And I think there's a real liberation that comes from that work. Human beings aren't supposed to sit around idle. It's unhealthy, I think.
Yeah, it's so interesting what you're saying, Hunter, and what a terrific example. One of the dimensions to the power paradox that I write about in the power paradox is as we rise in power and when we're really at the top of our game, we become convinced in our minds that we're successful because of kind of inherent special brilliances. And we don't need to work because we got the special IQ or the special gene or whatever it is. And that leads us astray because it makes us forget all the hard work we put into rising and how essential it is to great work, to success. You know, when I got to work on Inside Out, which was one of the great privileges of my life, because I study human emotion, which we talked about last time with you. And I remember working with Pete Docter, who's the director, for 5 years on that film. And that guy worked hard with Ronnie Del Carmen. And he won the Academy Award. He won the British Award. It was a really massively successful film. And I remember having a beer with him. And I was like, man, you know, you must be feeling this must be amazing. And he's like, I made some mistakes in that film. And let me tell you about my next film, right? Yeah. And I mean, literally a week after, he's digging into work.
Right.
And that's a good reminder.
So, do you know the origins of Arbeit macht frei?
No.
So it's actually this was the famous phrase that was on the gate at Auschwitz, but it actually originally comes from a novel that was written, I can't remember, 50, 60 years before, about a guy who was a gambler and an alcoholic and a dissolute, and essentially work was what saved him. It was going back to work and working hard that freed him. But then, of course, the Nazis took this thing that was actually a beautiful principle about human psychology and sort of how to have a better and happier life, and they put it in this context that suddenly made it disgusting. And one of the best things I've ever read was I haven't been able to ever find it again. You know, sometimes you read something, you're like, "That's amazing. Where is it?" But it was an intro to one of Primo Levi's books. And he said that one of the worst things about the Holocaust for him, because he was a chemist, was that it robbed work of its dignity and that work was never the same for him. And he ultimately ended up committing suicide. So that idea of work as this very sort of liberating concept and this thing that is key to psychological health and happiness, I think is a thing that is massively, it's underestimated.
Yeah, absolutely. And a critical question for today.